Good morning. My name is Nina May. I'm the editor of Wunderdog Magazine. I am joined by the one and only Dominic Dyer, animal rights campaigner and friend of all the pets. I should say, first of all, that on this Saturday morning, neither of us are sitting in our normal homes. I have decided to take our dogs away from London because of the fireworks. And Dominic is also not in his real home. Are you, Dominic?
No, I'm sorry. We're in a rented house because we've got building work going on as well. So we're both in temporary homes at the moment. It's good that we can link up all the same.
But still, we have important things to talk about. So let's do it. Dominic, you started a petition called the Cost of Living Animal Welfare Crisis Fund. It is a mouthful, but it is important to talk about it. So tell me in a nutshell what it is you want the British government to do.
Well, I've been looking at the situation, as many have over the last few months, as the economy has deteriorated rapidly. We are now looking in a situation, the Bank of England said on Friday, where we could have the longest recession in history. We have record interest rates, in terms of growth of interest rates, over inflation over 10%, and, energy costs that are rising rapidly, and, massive concern about incomes and rising unemployment. So we have a huge financial crisis that's weighing heavily on all of us in relation to our day-to-day lives. But the concern I have is what's going to happen to the millions of companion animals that people have in private ownership in Britain. We have over 11 million dogs and cats, and that number increased by over 3 million during the period of lockdowns and COVID-19, from 2020 to 2022, and over 20 million animals. And maybe 30-40% of the people polled recently by RSPCA are saying that they have worries about meeting vets bills, pet insurance, and food costs. So we could face a crisis, in my view, and this is widely shared across the charity and veterinary sector, where we could potentially see millions of animals face being euthanized on economic, not animal welfare grounds, in the biggest destruction really of animals since the Second World War.
And also, Dogs Trust yesterday released a poll saying that 13% of dog owners they spoke to face going into debt to look after their pets. And, a third of them even said that I think £100 vet bill would really be a problem for them and they would have to borrow money for that. So against this backdrop, a lot of vets must really see a lot of desperation in their practices as well. So what are you hearing from the veterinary industry?
I think it's difficult for vets. I've been on the front line working alongside a vet that I know well recently, who kindly allowed me to come and see her, working with her team of vets, vet nurses, animal care assistants in the west of England. And, it made me think about what was actually happening day in, day out. I think that the thing you're beginning to see is that, the issue of costs, vet fees, is coming up all the time. More and more of the clients are cancelling their pet insurance because they can't afford it, or they're delaying bringing dogs or cats in for treatments. By the time they get them in, the animal is in a far worse condition. So I think, vets have a difficult decision to take. Ultimately, they have to put the welfare of the animal first. The clients have to decide what they want to happen to the animal. I think a lot of us believe it's vets that make these decisions. No, they can only advise the client. A client can come in and say, listen, I can't look after this animal anymore. I need it to be put to sleep. What the vet could do was say, well, it's a perfectly healthy animal. Is there any alternative family support or financial support or anything that's there? But the scale of the problem they're going to face is immense. So most vets are going to have no backup facilities available. There'll be no rescue centres that the dog or cat can go to. There'll be no support facilities available to them. And ultimately, unless the person concerned can pay bills to look after the animal, then the animal's welfare will be compromised. And it might well be that there's no alternative but to, put the animal to sleep. And the impact, I think, of vets, vet nurses having to do that on so many occasions. For example, if this turns into hundreds of thousands of animals, you could see a winter where they're just inundated with dogs and cats coming in to be put to sleep. There's a massive mental health problem in the veterinary industry already. The industry is completely short of staff, vets and vet nurses, primarily because of Brexit. We can't bring them in from abroad as easily as we once did. And there's a mental health crisis already in the industry. It will get far worse if they spend most of their time putting healthy animals to sleep because no one can afford to pay for that. And that's something that the government does have to deal with, in my view. And I think the charities are under real pressure. The RSPCA and Dogs Trust and others are doing a great job of alerting us to what's actually happening.
Yeah.
But they also face a problem, as you know, that people are not giving as much money to charity because they haven't got it. So they're seeing their income on one end go down and the demand for their services rapidly increasing on the other end, which they can't meet.
And of course, we also have the pandemic pups still, don't we? They're still
exactly, you do. And all the breeding of dogs that was unregulated went on. It's a very, very difficult situation here. 1939 is what you have to look back to, which is when the government turned around to the nation and said, listen, you're going to have to put your pets to sleep because we're not going to be able to guarantee we can feed them anymore, but people have to come first. So, millions of animals were euthanized in a very short period of time. I think we could see something on a similar scale. And that's why I've made it clear in the press statement we put out yesterday. That's what we're looking at, unless the government steps up and says, listen, we want to do something to put tens of millions of pounds. We're not talking hundreds of millions and billions. We're not talking of, let's be clear, the government have spent billions and billions throwing money at the energy problem that we all face. Quite rightly, they should, because it has to be done. But they've spent absolutely nothing on animal welfare. And remember, this is part of a big multi-billion-pound business anyway. So actually, it's in the government's interest to try and step in and do something to support the veterinary industry, the charities, the animal welfare sector. So that the more animals that are kept alive, Nina, the more money that goes into the economy, because your people will spend on those animals.
Just tell me, how is the petition going to help with these challenges? What are sort of the main pillars of the fund that you're proposing?
I think the first thing we've done, and you've seen it, is come up with and I've worked with a number of vets that sort of kicked around a number of ideas of how a crisis fund can work. But my view was, listen, we could all talk to each other as organizations and make no progress because everyone will have different opinions about what shouldn't be done. So my view is, let's make this into a petition. That way that everyone can see it for what it is, the argument, and they can sign it. And it also allows me to do what I'm doing with you and the media, is begin to talk about it more widely as an idea, a concept. And that's what it is. We've come up with a concept to say the government could set up a cost of living animal welfare crisis fund. The government could bring together the major charities and the veterinary industry to take that money and deliver it using existing mechanisms to the people that need it. This is not rocket science. It can be made to work if there's a will politically to do it. And yes, we have a new prime minister who's been quite happily showing his dog off to the public. We have a new chancellor who's also been showing his dog off to the public. So I'm asking Rishi Sunak and I'm asking Jeremy Hunt to step up and say, yeah, we are dog owners. We care for our animals. We want to do something about this. And, this is not a debate just isolated to Britain. There's debates in Holland, Germany, France, and no doubt the US and other places about this. But I think Britain could actually come up with something that would show other countries that we're going to actually act.
So just to make clear, so that we know exactly which groups we want to really start signing your petition, who are the main stakeholders? So you already mentioned vets, animal charities. Who else do you really want to get behind this charity? Oh, sorry, this fund.
Ultimately, I want the people to get behind it, because that will push the charities and the veterinary industry and government to wake up and do something. It's cat and dog owners, of which there's over 20 million. Okay, so if we need 100,000,
we need 20 million signatures.
20 million people out there who have dogs and cats in this country, including most members of parliament and most of the cabinet. So and shadow cabinet. So I want the prime minister, the chancellor. I want Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner. I want all the key politicians, in government and in shadow government, to think about what their position is on this. I want people not only to sign the petition, I want them to contact their MPs and say, you've got dogs and cats, what are you going to do about it? I want you to support this. We need this to happen. Yeah. I want this to get to the door of Downing Street quickly, to the point where the Prime Minister is being asked by journalists, what are we going to do about dogs and cats? And, I want MPs standing up in Parliament asking them. Now, we'll have this debate again of, it's pets before people again. It's not pets before people, Nina. It's pets and people.
Of course.
As we spoke about, because this relationship is so, so important. And to be quite frank, I don't think there's an MP in Parliament, no matter what side of politics they're on, that would probably disagree with the need for this. I don't think there would. I think it'd be hard-pressed to argue that there's no role for government here, that we should just step back and just let this just flood in, this huge numbers of animals being put to sleep, because every one of them will be a desperate situation for the family giving it up, but also a desperate situation for the vets and vet nurses having to do the deed of putting them to sleep. The other side of it is you've got other elements we need to look at, which we said in the plan of action. What about the charities working with the homeless, which is going to increase in number, to have dogs on the streets? Dogs on the Street is a great charity, and there are others that are doing amazing work. They need support because their burden and their need for their services is going to increase massively. So we've got to help them. What about local authorities? Because ultimately local authorities are there to round up dogs. We don't have much of a stray dog problem in this country, thankfully, but we could have a massive one. Because people might just start, the worst of dog owners, and I'm afraid there are some, might just let those animals go. The other thing here is the mental health of the veterinary industry itself. Vets, vet nurses, animal care assistants, they are going to have to do some very difficult work over the next 6 to 12 months if the numbers that we anticipate will come through that have to be euthanized. So we need to give them support. So that has to be done as well. And the final element of this, which is an issue close to my heart when you look at NAOSAD and other issues I've been trying to deal with on the Afghan side, is trying to ensure we have a fast-track visa system that will allow vets and vet nurses to enter this country to work quickly to support this program. So if this program was put in place, if there were opportunities to provide more services to families that couldn't afford to pay, then we'd need more vets and vet nurses. So we need a means by which we could bring vets and vet nurses in from Europe and other places. And that should include places like Afghanistan, where we've tried to say to the government, we have people that are qualified and could work in practice here under supervision, because you have this situation where they have to be MRCBS accredited to operate independently. But if they're not, they can work under the supervision of an MRCBS vet. So you could bring a foreign vet nurse in, you could work under the supervision of an existing MRCBS registered vet here in the UK. And, you know, we could have pop-up clinics. We could have, there's a lot of space in veterinary clinics where you could have a room set aside where the government funded program could operate from. So someone could come into the clinic and say, I haven't got the money. And say, okay, don't worry, you sign this form, you go over there is going to be provision made for you under this government emergency program to make sure that your dog can have the flea treatment it needs, or we can get that other treatment that it requires.
So how much money are we talking about, and which department is going to really take the lead on this? I'm guessing DEFRA?
It probably would be DEFRA. Having said that, the key would be the Treasury. How much money would you need? Well, you could pick a figure, but I think if you could get 50, 100 million pounds, it would be a good start. You know, and I think that's doable. Government will say, where are we going to find out what's the need for that? I'll say, well, actually, there is a big need for it. I think if you talk to PDSA, Blue Cross, particularly, and allow them to take public money to try and expand the level of services they could provide, that would work for them. I'm sure they'd be very keen to try and do that. At the moment, for example, PDSA can only provide veterinary care to a certain level to people on social security benefits, and generally it's one animal per family. So it's very restrictive. What you'd need to be able to do is to allow them to extend that cover to people that say, listen, I'm in financial difficulties at the moment, but I need some help for this animal. Could you provide some support for it? So I think that would be it. It's difficult to put a figure on this. I think the most important thing is that the government actually say, we will do something. We will do something. And then we'll sit down and see actually the extent of the problem and how much money we could allocate. The other thing, Nina, is I think that we need to see the corporate sector step up as well. If the government put in public money, what I'd like to see is funds come in from the big corporate vet practices, Vets for Pets, for example, you know, the big pharma companies, Bayer and others that produce all the drugs for the animals concerned, the big pet food manufacturers, all of them, I think, should step up and go, we've got a role to play here. It's in our interest to make sure animals stay alive because we service this industry going forward. We provide all these products. So what we'll do is we'll put money in as well during this emergency period. So I think, you know, that's what I'd like to see. But ultimately, Prime Minister and the Chancellor have to make a decision. It's not going to be Teresa
and they're both dog owners, as we know.
And they're both dog owners. And I think they are both, in my view, open to persuasion. You know, it was interesting that Rishi Sunak said he wasn't going to go to COP27 in Egypt last week. He's now going to COP27, you know, next week because he's been forced to. So public opinion can have an influence. You know, what I want to see is there's a real debate about this. I want journalists talking about it, dog owners talking about it, politicians talking about it, the public talking about it, vets talking about it. And I think if we can do this right, from my experience, and we push it out there and people start engaging, then we can definitely do that because the scale of this is huge. This is not just about Dominic Dyer and another campaign. It's actually about all of our companion animals, our relationships with them, and the difficulties we're going to face in the next 12 months because of the economic problems this country faces.
Absolutely. Now, we should, of course, also say that for people who are at the moment, like today, struggling with their caring for their animals, the PDSA is still there. As you said, they're doing a phenomenal job, and perhaps they might even get some more funding. I also want to give a shout out to Blue Cross, which is setting up a pet food bank network across the country. Do check their website. They're continuously adding new places where you can get help to get pet food. And of course, Dogs Trust is also trying to help, be it with foster care or if you're thinking of giving up your pet. So don't just, as Dominic said, don't just abandon your pet or ask your vet to put it down. There is help out there. Don't be afraid to ask. Don't be shy. There is information on this on the wunderdogmagazine.com website, and also PDSA, Blue Cross, Dogs Trust. Do check out these websites and they should be able to help you.
Yeah, exactly.
Dominic?
They're doing great work. They're doing great work. And I think you're right. You know, we just need to make sure we keep the focus on it. The only final thing I would say is that part of the program would also include pet food banks. Exactly what you're saying the charities are doing, but at a national level. public money in to ensure that we have pet food banks across every town and city. So if people are short of money, there's a place in to go to get pet food.
Dominic,
Excellent.
thank you so much for your time.
Welcome,
and I
Nina.
hope next time we speak to each other, we'll be in our normal homes again.
I hope so. And we have some more positive news on this as well. You take care of yourself. Thank you.
Thank you.